With that story I said earlier, that a lot of people are just not aware of how long the 2019 ENCE lineup actually basically existed for most of 2018. It was even going to tournaments. Like, I remember most famously, right at the end of 2018 was where the team obviously had this really good run at the fucking Star Series, but because it was the one where loads of the big teams turned it down. I even worked that event. Everyone was like, it gives a fuck about this event. In fact, the fact that like ENCE won it was almost just like, it's not legit, is it? Because you needed like I think I had Mouse Spots or something was there. We needed like the big name to win it to make it seem legit. So at the time, everyone was like, they're not going to do anything as a team. Like, the thing is, this isn't like an unusual pattern though, because if you ever look at the history of Counter-Strike, most teams get really good in the first like 3 months, you know. Basically, like the lineup usually clicks, you know, like you even have a couple of maps you're just good on immediately. It's actually quite rare to have this long to sort of develop as a team. So, like, as someone watching the team, knowing them inside, what would you say the story was? How did they go from just like average, I wouldn't even say tier 1, they were like a tier 2, like mid-tier 2 team, to legitimately one of the best teams in the world, obviously beating the Astralises in major, like that would be like fantasy stuff if you told people that at the beginning of the lineup.
Yeah. I mean, I was there from the very beginning. Actually, funnily enough, even though having all my responsibilities in the company, I also ended up being their coach for a while in 2018. This was like from, I think, April until August. I think August is when Twist joined up with us. We finally found ourselves a full-time coach. I think it was basically a few things. First of all, there was no pressure for them to become like top 5 in the world over the course of a certain specific amount of time, right? But we gave them time to kind of mold in and develop. There was a real grinders attitude on each of the players. They were working their hearts out all the time, and they managed to make it like a few steps at a time. The progression just made a lot of sense, right? Like, after a few months, the early parts were a little rough. They were getting their asses kicked in online cups, as you usually do. Then we got a lucky break. We got invited to a LAN qualifier for IAM Cologne 2018, which we managed to win. Went on to IAM Cologne in 2018, had a decent run there. We beat, I want to say, NIP. We beat Mouse Sports, I think. And then we lost to Navi in like in the game that could have made us go into the playoffs, and we lost in a 3-mapper series.
And they won the event, if people don't know, so it was kind of a rough loss to take at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Then went on to the Faceit Majors Minor, lost 2 or 3 opportunities to qualify for the major, a massive blow. That was one of those kind of low points where the team, I think, lost a bit of their confidence, but I think in the big picture, it was actually probably a good thing that they didn't make the major at that point in time. Then went on to grind a couple of tournaments in the fall, and then the Star Ladder one you mentioned, where they won in a final against Vega Squadron in a best of 5, where I think we had a massive lead, but then you could just tell they were nervous. They were not able to clinch the game, but then eventually managed to do it. And I think once they won that tournament, and then there was a DreamHack Open right after they won as well, the team was just full of confidence. And I think Twista and Alexi B and Aldo, as a trio, were doing a really, really good job of leading that team.
One thing I found very interesting about this squad as well is, if people don't know, this actually isn't the traditional way that Finnish teams were built, because obviously in CSGO there hasn't been loads and loads and loads of top Finnish talent, or if there has, I'd say there has, but they just haven't tried to be pro, unfortunately. A lot of them didn't really care. I mean, a lot of them barely even would care about playing FPL. It seems like they're just natural talents in the old school way. So the problem is this: if people know, when Finland used to have loads of talent, like back in your day as a top pro, that was when actually it used to be like a lot of places, it would just stack the star players, and then you just try to get as many of the star players in one team as you can, and then you go out there and it's like fucking Space Jam. You just try and beat the aliens, which is all the other countries, you know. That's like the joke. But the problem is that I always thought, even despite talent, the best Finnish teams are always the ones where it has good team play, when like the people fit together. Like, there's even famously been some lineups where they did do the cynical move where they kick the worst player for the better skill player. It makes the team worse. Like, some of the best lineups are the ones where just the players that work together. To me, this is like the ultimate example of that, mate, because even though now a couple of these players, like obviously Alexi B has a career after this, I'm sure Alu could play in a top team. I think maybe if he's in the right squad, someone like look, the rest could be in teams, but they would never be like, they wouldn't be in the HLV top 20 ever, probably, most of them, right? This team, like, to me, looks like one of the best team play teams I think Finland's ever produced. Like, when this squad was together, man, they were mega in the server, mate. Like, the amount of times I saw them just using Counter-Strike fundamentals to work together to kill like the most skilled players in the game. It was crazy. Like, the idea that that ENCE lineup could ever beat Na'Vi is mental when you think about Simple and Electronics. Like, this lineup must have been something special.
For sure. I remember when it was first announced, even yourself and everyone, especially were like, this is like a retirement home for Valdo. Like, what is this shit,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Which is fair. It's fair enough, right? When you're looking outside in, players you've never heard of put together. But it's also that longevity they played together, that all the routines became so apparent for them. They knew exactly what each other were doing, how they would react on the server. And then on top of that, individually, they were all peaking.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.